Hey guys, what is up, and I welcome each and every one of you to a new League of Legends video. So as I'm sure most of you know by now, patch 7.4 has come onto the live servers, but we're going to be looking one step forward as I did 2 weeks ago and see what's happening already in patch 7.5 on the PBE. This will give us an early sneak peek at what Riot is planning to do for the next patch 2 weeks later, what are the biggest things that we should look out for, or things that we can start thinking about and expecting to see. So if you guys end up enjoying this kind of video and you want me to continue doing this sort of quick early patch analysis for the biggest changes happening on a fresh new PBE patch, let me know by simply hitting that like button. But let's not waste any more time and get right into the biggest current changes happening for patch 7.5 on the PBE. So a few days ago I made a video discussing that there is an AATROX rework happening very shortly, and it seems like it's finally happening. Now this isn't going to be the major rework where they're actually legitimately almost changing the champion, but this is still going to be essentially a rework trying to put him in a better spot until the huge rework finally does happen several months later. So let's talk about exactly what Riot is planning to do. So first we have his passive. Now in a greater scheme of things, it is still very similar in concept. You know, it still has the blood well, it still fills up once you use abilities, it still has the potential to revive you, and it still gives you certain bonuses. But here's what's different, because it is still also quite significantly different at the same time. First of all, the passive has a lower cooldown for when and how often it can revive you. Second of which, as it fills up to 100%, which now also fills up faster if I'm not mistaken, only then at 100% of the passive will you finally get actual bonuses to AATROX and actually get something from it. Because once it is at 100%, you get a buff for 4 seconds, which is called the Blood Rush. Now Blood Rush will give AATROX 25 base attack damage, which is quite generous. He'll get 20 to 50% increased attack speed, of course based on level, and just like right now, he'll still have that potential to revive upon taking fatal damage, recovering 30% of his health over 3 seconds. Now his Blood Well, which is the passive that fills up, has been slightly decreased in its capacity, and the Blood Well capacity growth per level has also been decreased from 45 to 0. But all in all, what you need to know about his passive is the fact that it still works in a similar fashion, but it fills up more quickly, and once it gets to 100%, you get a buff called Blood Rush, where you get 25% of base attack damage, you get increased attack speed, and you just become stronger for that duration. But there's also changes to his other abilities, so let's talk about his Q first. Now probably the biggest change is the fact that not only does this ability no longer use any of your HP to actually cast, but it not only still fills up your Blood Well whenever you use the Q ability, but it also fills it up 20% of the maximum amount. So this in itself is already quite good because you're not losing any HP whatsoever for using this ability, yet it still fills up quite a bit of your passive, which now your kit more or less revolves around to get that bonus effect and to really go off for those 4 seconds. But following this, his base damage on his Q has been heavily lowered. However, to kind of compensate, it scales on total AD rather than bonus AD, which means his base AD of 60 will grant him plus 66 damage at level 1 just from his base AD without any items whatsoever, so his Q will get extra damage and I'll actually do more damage at level 1. And as you'll see in just a bit, they're really heavily focusing AATROX on being an AD only type champion without having any hybrid elements, or at least nowhere near as much. Next up, we also have AATROX's W, which also got a rework. So the first thing to talk about is going to be the healing component of his W. The heal no longer triples under 50% HP, but now it has more of a base heal and it also scales on missing HP. So this one is a little bit strange because before, or at least currently on the live server, it actually scales off of 25% bonus AD, and it seems like Riot is trying to emphasize everything scaling more off of AD in general, but switching this one to being off of missing HP rather than just scaling off of some form of AD as well feels a little bit awkward in a certain sense, but I guess it kind of makes sense if you really think about it. But the second part of AATROX's W that offers you more damage no longer uses your HP to actually use this component anymore, just like his Q. But the damage on his W now is actually quite a bit lower than the current AATROX on the live servers. The base is lower, the scaling is lower, but at least now whenever you proc his W, so whenever you get the third auto attack, it will fill up 20% of his passive, so getting AD and some attack speed will make that passive fill up pretty damn fast. And now last but definitely not least, we also have his E ability. So the cost on this one actually is a little bit different because not only has it changed from costing 5% of your current HP, but it actually still costs you HP to use his E, but now it'll only cost you 30. So I did the math on this by just a bit, and again, now that it uses 30 HP to cast rather than 5%, but currently with the Doran's Blade at level 1 if that's your starting item, using your E ability will also cost you about, give or take, 30 HP, if not slightly more, if you also run HP runes. So at the end of the day, it really isn't that much of a difference, but as you level up and as you become obviously a higher level champion, it will be a better trade-off since the percentage won't actually be scaling with you since you're only staying at 30 flat HP. And his E ability actually has better base damage as you level up this ability, so by rank 5 it'll actually give you a total of bonus 35 damage flat. It has 10% extra bonus AD scaling, but it lost its full 60% AP scaling. Now this isn't really all that bad. I mean, again, they're trying to emphasize a lot more on the AD component for AATROX, but at the same time, the damage type has been changed from magical to physical. The amount the E ability slows has been changed from being 40% at all ranks to only starting at 30%, but going all the way up to 50%, and the slow duration has been changed to be at 2 seconds at every single rank, which isn't all that bad, I guess, but before, or at least currently on the live server, it actually goes up to 2.75. But just like every other ability, his E ability now also fills up 20% of the blood well. So if you use Q, if you use the W, if you use the E, that's 60% already. If you hit one person with the ultimate, that's another 20%, which is 80. So you can see how quickly you can actually get his passive up and you can get that buff going as soon as possible. So there you guys have it, a bunch of changes happening to AATROX, a champion that is essentially forgotten in League of Legends, but Riot is trying to bring him back by giving him this rework as of right now. Let me know down in the comments below what you think. Personally, I think it's very interesting. I think his new aspect and the way he'll play will be a lot better. It'll be a lot more reliable and smooth with how he fills up his passive now, the amount of extra damage and bonus attack speed he gets from his passive as well, and just overall how he's just not reliant on constantly using his own HP to cast while not really being a tanky champion, so that's always been sort of an awkward thing. But there's still a few more things I want to discuss, so let's get right into those next. Next up, I want to discuss Fizz. First of all, Fizz's Q AP ratio has been increased by just flat out 20%. So his Q ability is obviously getting buffed. Next up, we also have his W, where the bleed duration has been lowered from 4 seconds to 3 seconds, which, if I'm not mistaken, is a good thing because the damage that'll be done is the same, but it'll just happen faster. On top of this, the mark duration has been increased from 4 seconds to 6 seconds, which also is a buff, even though it's not really the biggest buff in the entire world. But here's the part that sort of makes up for the fact that his Q and W just got buffed. His ultimate. Now this thing has been very interesting to say the least, because there's been so many times where the ultimate pretty much actually missed, but it would still somehow find a way to attach to some nearby target even though it honestly should not have. So essentially Riot is fixing this. The auto pickup on miss is less generous and, I quote, ground attach removed. The fish now flops on the ground and plays a death animation whenever it misses. So this is Riot's attempt at trying to make this not as annoying to face. So again, even though his ultimate did get this somewhat decently big nerf, they had to buff some other aspects of Fizz to not just completely put him into the graveyard, and I think overall it's a pretty worthy trade-off. But again, there's only going to be one way to truly find out, and that's when he finally gets onto the live servers, or at least after some testing has been finally done on the PBE server. Next, let's talk a little bit about LeBlanc because she's also receiving some changes. Now, I'm not entirely sure how I feel about LeBlanc's changes here, but I mean, I guess you guys can let me know down below as well. So here's what's happening. Essentially, her Q ability has been doubled in damage when it comes to dealing damage to minions, right? Flat out, double the damage. Regarding its base damage, regarding the actual AP scaling, it has been simply doubled. Which I guess, okay, fine, it makes sense, you know, better wave clear, whatever, sure, that's cool. But then her W, Distortion, has had its damage overall, not just to minions, overall lowered by quite a decent amount, because before, or at least I guess currently on the live servers, it starts at 85 and it goes all the way up to 225 at rank 5 while having a plus 60% AP scaling. Now it starts at 40, which is less than half, and then only goes up to 140, which I mean is more than half of 225, but it's still really not that much. And just to make things even worse, it's only at a 30% AP scaling now, which is actually quite shit. So it seems like Riot is trying to emphasize the fact that you should be maxing Q first on LeBlanc and not W, but I mean, it's kind of a really strange way to do this. Again, Riot has noted that this is somewhat of an extreme change and it's definitely a work in progress, but I really hope that they don't go with this because it is completely just weird, awkward, and just it doesn't make any sense, because on top of all of this, her mimicked distortion, which is if you press R then W, the damage on this has also been lowered by quite a bit on the base damage. All in all, pretty shit changes for LeBlanc, definitely putting her somewhat in the gutter here. Not entirely sure why they're doing this, and I really hope it doesn't go through because this will actually legitimately make LeBlanc somewhat of a weak champion. Alright, next up on the list, I want to talk about KINDRED. Now, KINDRED at one point was an insanely strong jungler. She was insanely highly contested, very strong, extremely overpowered, but at the moment, I mean, honestly, what is this champion? I mean, this champion almost doesn't even exist. But it seems like Riot is finally putting some attention to her, or them, or whatever you want to call them, and maybe this is enough to bring Kindred back into the meta, because the changes are actually quite damn good. So the buff is going to be to their passive, the one that marks certain camps around the map, and jungle monsters, scuttle crab, baron, all that shit. And it's going to be working as follows. So there are 4 different tiers for Kindred's passive currently, and on the new Kindred as well, where it decides as to which targets or which jungle camps or what it's going to mark passively for you to go ahead and get. Currently on the live servers, tier 1 is 0 to 2 marks, and it can mark either the scuttle crab or the raptors. But now on the PvE, tier 1 is when you have no marks, when the game essentially just started at 2 minutes and 30 seconds, I believe, or something like that, and you're guaranteed that it will mark the scuttle crab, that it'll not mark anything else in the game. This makes it so much easier to get your first stack. You don't have to put yourself at the risk of going into the enemy jungle just to get your mark early on. Besides, I mean, usually the enemy jungler will just go ahead and kill the camp before you can get to it anyways, and then it'll take even longer to get your mark. So this is just better overall. And then you can see with the rest of the marks and the rest of the tiers, it just works better. It's a lot safer. It's not making you go as deep into the enemy jungle to try and get your marks for your passive, and it's just overall better and safer. Personally, I think this is actually quite a fantastic change. It'll make Kindred just overall more consistent and reliable. You won't have to be putting yourself at risk to actually get the damage that you want, and you can just be overall a safer champion and actually snowball much easier, because again, there's a much better chance you'll be getting your first mark off of the crabs compared to if it went on the raptors instead, and you go for it and you just end up dying, and chances are your jungle is completely effed. So very excited to see how much this will affect Kindred when she goes on the live servers. Following this, very quickly, I want to talk about some nerfs happening to Edge of Night, because this item has been currently considered to be insanely broken. So the AD has been lowered by 5, the unique active cooldown has been increased by 15 seconds, and the unique active duration has been lowered from 10 seconds all the way down to 5, literally half. Now I can actually see these changes being quite good. I mean, the actual active duration when you actually have the bubble around you has been just way too long. 10 seconds is quite a bit of time. 5 seconds maybe a little bit too short, maybe 6 or 7 would have been the better spots, but regardless, a pretty damn big hit to a very strong item. Lethality hasn't been touched, which is in my opinion the most important part, but all in all, definitely some much needed nerfs for Edge of Night. On top of this, there's essentially a rework happening to Doran's shield, where the total cost has been lowered, the health has been increased by 20, the health regeneration has been changed from 6 flat HP per 5 seconds to 100 base health regeneration. It's got a completely new unique passive, giving you 200 base health regeneration for 10 seconds after taking damage from an enemy champion, and also dealing 5 bonus physical damage to minions, also being a new passive. But unfortunately, the unique passive of it blocking 8 damage from single target attacks and spells has been removed. So the point of this change for Doran's shield is just to be more effective against people that constantly harass you in lane, because usually you get Doran's shield if you have a losing lane matchup and you want to have sustain, and this will definitely help you if you're constantly getting poked out and zoned and all that good stuff. And the final thing I want to discuss in this video is the fact that there's going to be several champions that now have recall animations. There's going to be over 70 champions and over 300 skins that now finally have some form of animation that they do as they recall, rather than just sort of awkwardly standing in one spot. This isn't really the biggest change in the world, but it is something that's really small yet also extremely effective, because I've always found it very annoying that certain champions would have this really cool animation even in certain skins as they recall, but their base skin or other champions just simply have absolutely nothing. So this is a really cool add-on. It'll definitely add a little bit of extra to the game and just feel a little bit better as well. Again, nothing huge, but something definitely worth mentioning. But either way, guys, I mean, that is about it for this video. There you have it, some pretty damn big changes happening to AATROX, Fizz, LeBlanc, Kindred, and even some of the items. If you did enjoy this video, make sure to hit that like button. If you found it useful or informative or whatever, let me know down in the comments below as well. Which of these changes do you like, dislike? But either way, thank you all so much for watching. Subscribe if you haven't, share this video with your friends so everyone else knows what's up, and I hope to see you from the next video. Peace.